The number of degree shows I've gone to over the years where you walk in, oh, does your tutor like Howard Hodgkin or whoever? Yes, how do you know? Because they all look like Howard Hodgkins. The teacher is very often a failed artist.
Yeah, and they're influencing.
And they influence. They should educate. So this woman had developed this very specific cancer. And every time she went to see a consultant, she got a different journey. Now, the trouble with that then is, which one do you trust?
Yep.
Who, you and I don't know. But I was able to say to him, well, I don't know anything about cancer, only that's not the word I used. I don't know anything about cancer, but I know a man who does. And 2 telephone calls later, she's being treated free of charge by the world expert. Now, that's nice.
Absolutely.
That's joining the dots.
Hi, I'm Freya. Welcome to the Skynet Chronicles, Business in the AI Age, the podcast that dives deep into the world where artificial intelligence meets business. Join us as we explore the latest trends, challenges, and opportunities in this ever-evolving landscape. From innovative startups to established enterprises, we'll uncover the secrets behind the successful integration of AI technologies. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and get ready to unlock the mysteries of business in the AI age.
Well, good morning, John. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
I've been looking forward to it too. It's fun.
So, where should we start? You've told me so many great stories since we've known each other. I think I'd like to start with the removal of furniture from Vatican City.
Oh, well, I only removed a little bit from the Vatican. Well, that came about when I was 17. I saw an advert in Country Life when I was on holiday, and it was for the chairs from St Paul's Cathedral. And funny enough, I was on holiday in Ireland, and I came back from Ireland and went into St Paul's, bought a set of 6 for myself, and one for a friend whose birthday it was that week. It was his 21st birthday that week. And we were halfway home, and I thought, if I'm going to want a set of 6 because of the history and everything that goes with them, it's quite possible other people will want some. So I went back and I bought them all, about 1,600 chairs. And then I went...
Sorry, you were 17?
Yeah. And then I thought, well, of course, there's a problem with storage. So a friend of ours had an empty cottage, 2 cottages, derelict cottages. So I stored some in there, and I stored some in garages all over Brentwood. And I thought, well, if I'm right, people might like things from other places as well. So I went to Westminster Abbey and I bought some stuff from them. And then it snowballed from there. So when I was 21, for my 21st birthday, my parents gave me a package tour with Thompson's, Rome, Florence and Venice in a week. And I went on that, and we went through, did all the usual things, saw the Colosseum, saw this, saw that, all the rest of it. And we're coming out through the Vatican and came out of St. Peter's into this big square. And in the big square, I saw some plastic stackers, and I thought, I wonder if they've got plastic stackers. I wonder if they're where the old chairs are. So I found the security office, and I went up to the security office and I said, I want to talk to the clerk of the works. And they said, no, speak any English, which was funny because they were the Swiss Guards and they speak everything. And then I said, I want to see the man that looks after the building, tapping the stone walls. And I said, no, speak any English. I want to make a very substantial donation. And the reply was, how do you take your coffee? And I was taken into the storerooms. I had the Sistine Chapel to myself for 45 minutes. I was up and down the Pope's staircase and all over the gardens and things like that. And I came away with a couple of samples, a chair and a 7-foot bench. No back to it, just a bench, like a school bench. Like the sort of bench you find in a gym. And the young ladies who were taking the package tour said, okay, you better go to be at the front of the queue when we check in at the airport because that could be a problem. Fine. And I went up to the front of the queue, 2 suitcase, 1 suitcase, chair under one arm, 7-foot bench under the other arm, as you do, and checked in, and the check-in girl said, we won't put them on the plane. You have to put them on the plane. No idea why. Anyway, fair enough. So
Did you tell them where they'd come from at this point?
So I then just put them on the plane. That was no problem. Went back into the airport, and 2 girls from Thomas Cook said, You weren't worried about that, were you? I said, no. He said, well, why not? You could have been stuck in Rome. And I said, well, would you want to be the manager of an airport that gets a phone call from the Vatican saying, put him on the plane? I don't think so. That wasn't going to be a problem. So, and then I went to a country house sale near Malden to buy. I used to hold anything up to 2,500 shares in stock. And I went to a country house sale in Malden to buy some furniture from Buckingham Palace, to go with other furniture I'd already got from Buckingham Palace. And there was a painting. I didn't get what I wanted, and I was really frustrated that I'd wasted a day. So I thought, oh, what can I do? And there was a painting being sold by somebody called Carol Waite, RACBE, at £10. Now, okay, we're talking 45 years ago or more. But it was still £10. And I thought, with all those qualifications, it's got to be worth more than that. So I bought it. And I bought a couple of other paintings from the same sale. And then I wrote to the artist, Kev the Royal Academy, and I got a letter back telling me about it. And I wrote again thinking, well, if there's any more in the studio at £10 each, I might buy them. And I wrote again and said, can I come and see you? And it took me 2.5 hours to find this studio somewhere in Wandsworth, in a private house in Wandsworth. And I went over there. And this huge teddy bear opened the door and looked down at me and said, I'm Carol, you must be John. And I stood there looking up at this person thinking, oh, Christ, did I write Dear Madam? Because to me, Carol is a girl's name, but it wasn't Carol, it was Corel. His mum was Polish. And he was wonderful. He was a friend for the next 25, 30 years. He taught David Hockney, he taught Peter Blake, he taught Kittai, he taught everybody, including half of the royal family. And he said his job as professor of painting wasn't to teach his students how to paint. His job was to teach his students how to paint what they wanted to paint. So when you look at a Hockney, when you look at a Carol Waite and you look at a Hockney, visually you can see no connection. And in fact, the nice thing about Hockney was he said that he couldn't teach him anything. Not that he was an arrogant little shit, he wouldn't listen, just he was a natural born genius and Carol couldn't add to it.
Yeah. And
Carol had enough self-confidence not to mark his pupils down for not doing what he did. So the number of degree shows I've gone to over the years where you walk in, oh, did your tutor like Howard Hodgkin or whoever? Yes, how do you know? Because they all look like Howard Hodgkins. The teacher is very often a failed artist.
Yeah, and they're influencing.
And they influence. They should educate. We went to the Norwich School of Art 20 years ago when a friend of ours graduated. And all the illustrators, which is what we were there for, all the illustrators were there and they'd photocopied business cards. But they were there and you could talk to them. And I went into the fine art graduation and none of the artists were there. They were all down the pub. And there was one artist called James Brown whose work I really liked. Very bright, very colourful. Anyway, just out of pig-headedness, it took me 6 weeks to track this man down. And he was a nice guy. He ended up dying of Crohn's disease. Anyway, and I said, so I got in touch with the principal and I said, would you like me to come and talk to the students? As a successful gallery, would you like me to come and explain to the students how to approach galleries, which galleries to approach, things like that? And the response, oh no, we don't want to destroy their creativity. So they were being creative down the pub, but they weren't there to talk to prospective clients. And that's the art world for you. That's what it's like.
So you went on a journey from acquiring furniture en masse, storing it anywhere you could.
Yep.
Accidentally happening into super high-end, highly capable art.
Yeah. I used to deal with a third of the Royal Academicians.
What made you actually start the gallery?
I've no idea, really. I decided I got so much stuff I needed to... up to then I've been dealing from the back of a transit van. So with the cathedral furniture, a good example, for instance, is I bought all the Art Deco furniture from the Savoy Hotel. At that time, Art Deco wasn't popular.
Yep.
Anyway, but it was beautifully made by a woman called Betty Joel. And it was, we sold a lot of it to museums. And anyway, so I got a phone call from one day from somebody saying, you've done a photo. I used to go down to the library to photostat sheets and photographs. Anyway, I've seen the sheet that my daughter picked up a sheet. Where can I sit? I said, well, I'm based in Brentwood. And the guy said, well, I'm in London. It's a bit difficult for me to come out to you at the moment. Can you bring it to my office? I said, yeah. So he gave me an address at the back of, around the back of the Mansion House, 36A Walbrook, I think it was. Anyway, so I filled the van with this furniture, took it up to London, crack of dawn, parked up. Oh, now the clue should have been it was open air car parking for me. In the middle of London, in the city of London.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been the clue, but it wasn't. And anyway, so at 6 o'clock up there, go off, find a cafe, come back about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and some officious little toady is saying, you can't park there, you've got to move it 20 feet to the left or something. It was the entrance to the sorting office for the banks with all the checks. Anyway, the clearinghouse. So I moved it. I thought no more about it. Came back at 9 o'clock and went into the front of it. It's very strange. It's a Georgian building with a very, very modern office block behind. So if you stand and you look at the Mansion House, you see this huge glass building out the back with a glass cube on the roof. So 9 o'clock, I start to go towards the building, and this man comes down the stairs with an Alsatian at his side. Beautifully dressed. And the dog is obviously beautifully trained because he's off lead in the City of London. When he said his office, he meant it. He owns the office block. In fact, he owns all the land around the Mansion House. He was a gentleman called Peter Palumbo, and he was very, very nice. His suit was worth more than the van and all its contents. And it was about then that I thought maybe I ought to be dealing from some premises, but the furniture was much harder to deal with because you can get I got 2 hernias moving furniture. It was about 18 months after that I had an opportunity to then buy some premises. And I bought premises at the back of the high street because I wanted a car park. If people are travelling, we'd gone to Bath. Yeah, Bath. We'd driven to Bath one day for a friend having an opening of a gallery. And from Brentwood to Bath is about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'd allowed for that. And then we spent an hour and a half trying to find a parking place. And in the end, I just turned around and drove home again. And I thought, I don't want that to happen to my clients. So I want them to know if they come to me, they're relaxed. If they come by train, it's 20 minutes from Liverpool Street and a 3-minute cab drive from the station, 5-minute walk up the hill. If they drive to me, they know they've got a parking place. So they don't arrive stressed. They arrive relaxed. They arrive in feeling good. The first thing I'm likely to say to them is, do you want your coffee? Rather than, have you seen this? And we discuss everything under the sun. So I have clients literally from the local dustman to the House of Lords. And they are used to odd phone calls from me because I've spoken to them and I know what they do. If somebody comes in and says, I've got a terrible problem, I need a left-handed grommet to fit into a right-handed screw, I will know somebody that makes them. Yep. I will know somebody that does it. And my clients know that generally speaking, if I ring them up saying, I've got a problem, I expect the answer to be yes. Not, if only you'd rang me last week or ring me next week, because they know I'd do it for them. And the nicest thing that happened, nicest in a way that happened was, I've got a very good client in America, and he rang and he went quiet for 10 days. And this is a man that normally, if I ring him, he will either pick up the phone himself or send me a text, say, I'm in a meeting, I'll be out in half an hour or whatever. But if it's urgent, I'll come out now. And you can't ask for more than that in business. You can't. Anyway, he went quiet for 10 or 11 days. And after 11, and in retail, you assume if that happens, you've upset somebody and they're being too polite to tell you why. Not one of my faults. But anyway, and after 10 or 11 days, he rang up and he said that his PA had developed very specific cancer. And every time she went to see a consultant in America, she got a different journey. Now, the thing with cancer is not that you've got it, but how is it going to be treated? At the moment with cancer, we have a shotgun approach.
Yeah.
Bombard the body and let's hope that it cures the cancer. 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, if a woman got breast cancer, it was a 90 to 95% chance that she'd die. Now it's a 3% chance that she will die. Progress has been made.
Yeah.
But it's still the worry, and what's going to happen can often be more damaging psychologically than actually being told you've got it. Right. So this woman had developed this very specific cancer. And every time she went to see a consultant, she got a different journey. Now, the trouble with that then is, which one do you trust?
Yep.
You and I don't know. But I was able to say to him, well, I don't know anything about cancer, only that's not the word I used. I don't know anything about cancer, but I know a man who does. And 2 telephone calls later, she's being treated free of charge by the world expert. Now, that's nice.
Absolutely.
That's joining the dots.
It is, and
There's nothing in it for anybody.
I don't think that's
But there's
true.
a wonderful feel-good factor. There's a wonderful, yes, now give me the next challenge.
And we met through BNI
Yep.
and the principle of give us gain.
Yes.
And it's something that
Well, I've been doing it for 70 years,
Absolutely.
What's new?
But it is if you help somebody out at some point in the future, they will help.
It's not even that. It goes around I told you when I was coming up, I've had the most horrendous traffic jams coming here. But if you're in a line of traffic and somebody wants to come in from the side, they are going to delay you because there's one extra car in front of you. But you let them in. Yeah. You feel good. But more importantly, they feel good. So whether it's today, tomorrow, or a year's time, they will do the same thing to somebody else. And that might make a difference.
Yeah.
When I had an operation on my hand, I had a growth growing into the joint. When I had an operation on my hand, it went wrong, basically, and my hand swelled up like a football. And I went back to see the consultant, and the consultant said to the nurse, I'll take the stitches out because I know where they are, because you couldn't see them. It swelled like a joint of beef. Anyway. So rang Bupa and said, you're going to get another bill from the consultant. And I said, okay, why? And I explained. I said, yes, and I said, that's it. And the girl said, pardon? I said, well, that's it. 2% of all operations in the UK go wrong. Isn't it better that it's on my hand than on a young mother-to-be or somebody going through a car windscreen or a dad or a fireman or something like that? It's not going to ruin my hand modelling career because I don't have one. I don't write with my left hand, so it's not going to affect my handwriting, which is rubbish anyway. My partner says you can take my checks to the chemist and get them made up, so it's not going to affect my handwriting. I'm very happy to be a statistic to stop somebody else being a statistic. And you could hear this girl at Bupa going, no claim, no. She was very pleased. I was doing some fundraising that weekend for the RNLI because I used to do scuba diving. And the surgeon said, you're in hospital tonight on a drip. And I said, well, I can't, I'm fundraising. So he took a felt pen and he drew a line on my hand and he said to Linda, if it reaches that line, it's an emergency. He's in, no question. And, fortunately it didn't. So that's all right. But it's nice to be, I was very, very happy to tick a box for somebody else, if you like, that I will never know. But I was very happy to be part of that 2% that went wrong because it didn't matter.
No, that's it. And you still got a hand.
And it's still there. It's got a big scar on it, but it's still there,
Scars are stories anyway.
It doesn't matter. People get uptight about things that really don't matter.
So I've got a really loaded question for you.
Go on.
What makes good art?
Anything you enjoy.
I knew that was the answer coming.
The only good art is something you enjoy having on your wall. There's people come in the gallery and say, who's the next Banksy? I don't want the next Banksy. I want the next whatever. I don't want somebody that looks like Hockney. I don't want somebody that looks like Banksy. I don't want somebody that looks like Picasso or Rembrandt. I want somebody where any art, the artwork should be the signature, not what's written on it. At one point, we were dealing in a man called Tom Keating, who was a forger. And he had 4 series, whatever, on TV. And at one point, we brought Scotland Yard in because we were being offered fake forgeries. I mean, you couldn't make it up.
No.
We brought the police when Banksy did a piece in Lowestoft, I think it was, of a seagull taking chips out of a big skip. It was one of this vacation that he did. Guy rang up and said, "I've got some of the chips." So, which, fair enough, some of them had been blown into the road. Okay. So I said, "Oh yeah, and how do I know that these are the chips from the skip?" I mean, it was only insulation foam cut. He said, "Oh, I've got a video of me acquiring them." Now, I knew that within 4 hours, they'd put security fences around them. So I said, "Well, it's not for me. How much do you want for these things?" "Oh, about £1,800 each." And I said, you're mad, Well, that's why I'm being offered them in Germany, but they could be difficult to post. They weigh nothing. They might be big, but they weigh nothing. So he's obviously up off his trolley. Anyway, so I said, I don't think I'm interested. No, they're not for me. Thank you very much. And then he got in touch again. And he said, I'll show them to you. I said, "No, I don't think they're for me. No." So I said, you've got a video. Yes, I was videoed acquiring them, which meant his mate held the phone while he climbed over the barrier and stole them out of the skip. So I thought about this, and I thought the softest, gentlest way of scaring this young man off is to give it to the papers. So I gave the story to the East Anglian Daily Times, and they did a double-page spread about these things being stolen. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from this guy saying, "Well, do you want them or don't you?" What he didn't know was, in the meantime, the police had rung me and said, "What are you doing about this guy?" And I said, "Well, they're stolen. I'm not going to touch them." They said, "Well, because it's been in the papers, we have to investigate because of the word Banksy."
Yeah.
So a few days later, there's a couple in the gallery having a wander around. Young man walks in and says, "Are you John?" "Yes." "Oh, well, I've got the chips." I said, "Oh, yeah, are they in the car?" "Yes." "Well, bring them in." Of course, he brought them in, and the young couple were police officers. They arrested him on the spot for stealing them. But Norfolk or Suffolk police had sent 6 officers down. 4 of them looked like wardrobes, and this young couple. But they'd sent 2 vehicles and 6 officers down to arrest one young man. I don't know what happened about the chips at the end, but I mean, it was just... But that's the power of the word Banksy.
Yeah.
So we're doing a show in Colchester that starts in October. It's going to last for 5 months. And if we're doing an exhibition of good art, nobody will turn up. But because we say we're using 28 Banksies, we know the media coverage we're going to get. It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah. Didn't you say that you're going to have to crane some of these pieces?
Yeah, well, only 2 of them. So we'll be using one of those lorries where the whole lorry is a crane.
Yeah.
Because the building, which is called the Minories, is a medieval building. It's one of the oldest buildings in Colchester. But it was revamped in Georgian times. So there's a beautiful Georgian wall round the garden. So we can't just make a hole in it to wheel these things through. So we've got to use a crane. And that'll be, so we know, I mean, every TV station around will do it. When we moved one in Wales, the first wall I bought, it's a strange sentence that really, isn't it?
It really is, buying a wall to buy the art that's on the wall.
Yes, yeah, well, I've got 5 of them now. But when we moved the one in Wales, it cost £55,000 to move it 3 miles. The Welsh government paid for that. But what made me laugh is that when you paint on somebody else's wall, it's vandalism. It's a criminal act, yes? And we had they closed the roads and we had a police escort.
So I've always wondered how much of the work is pre-planned and pre-arranged with the owners of the building. So
it's all pre-planned. So a few months before the one turned up in Wales, for instance, which is the one I know most about because it's been such an ongoing thing, I was originally rung up by either the BBC or ITV or the Times saying, "There's a picture on a garage in Wales. Do you think it's by Banksy?" Because I've been dealing in Banksy street art since 2003. So I had looked at the images, I looked at the video, everything else, and I said, yes, I think it's by Banksy. And I ended up buying it. So then it was a case of how do we take it out? And I said, well, I've got a client that will move it for me for nothing. And the Welsh government said, no, you have to use a Welsh construction company, and it's got to be this one. And of course, they knew that, so they could charge what they liked. And then the Welsh government said, but we will pay for it to be moved. But you have to pay the company, and then we will give you the money back. So there was no direct liability, right? So this company called Scots were brilliant. They did a phenomenal job. They built in their yard 3 walls to cut up to see how they were going to do this job.
Yeah. Because
nobody's ever done it before. They've done it since, lots of times, but they've done it before. So we did all that. And, of course, Port Talbot is a steel town. So we used the steel from Port Talbot to make the protection. And what they did was they put a false floor under the wall, because this particular one is a nightmare, because it's not a flat wall. It's the right angle on a corner of a garage. So when we were moving it, we didn't know where the stresses and strains would be. So instead of picking up the wall, effectively they made a cradle. So I'm sitting here with a mug, but let's assume I'm sitting here with a cup and saucer.
Yeah.
And the cup is ancient Chinese porcelain, and I'm worried about it. You don't pick up the cup, you pick up the saucer with a cup sitting on it. Yeah. And that's what we did with the wall, with the corner of the garage. They put steel beams underneath, they put steel protection around it, and then the crane lifted 6.5 tons. Most of it's steel, admittedly, but moved 6.5 tons with the wall resting on the steel. It was phenomenal. Anyway, so we've got TV cameras there from everywhere, from HBO in America to Nippon TV and the BBC and ITV and Channel 4 and everybody else, and all the newspapers. And 3 Lloyd's underwriters had refused to underwrite it because they were, nobody's ever done this before.
Yeah.
And so I'm standing around watching this, and the BBC come up to me and say something about, you're looking very relaxed. And I said, fine, yeah, why not? Oh, the other thing was Scots had taken my banners off, my logo off the wall, and put their logo on everything, on every square millimetre. You could see the word Scots. Anyway. So the journalist says, you're very relaxed about this. I said, well, yeah, there's nothing I can do about it, is there? I mean, if somebody drops it, I'm not hardly going to catch this, And I said, well, what happens if it smashes? I said, it won't. How do you know that? Would you let anything happen to it with your name all over it? And needless to say, nothing happened. We put it on the back of a low loader, took it into town, put it into a unit. We put it into I'd got a 6,000 square feet ground floor unit, 40 metres from the railway station, across a piazza. So very easy to spot.
Yeah.
And the Welsh government wouldn't switch a light bulb on because Banksy wasn't Welsh. We wanted to create the world's 6th street art museum. But they wanted a Welsh museum. And I said, this is an international museum. I said to them, this is an international museum in Wales.
That's
not a Welsh museum.
No.
And the head of arts for Wales, I went to Wales every week for 4 months. And I was getting terrible chest pains and headaches and not sleeping and all the rest of it. And I don't suffer from stress. I'm a carrier. So if I've got a problem, trust me, you've got a problem, right? So I couldn't understand it. In 70 years, I've never suffered from stress. And I went into this meeting, and a woman, head of arts for Wales, said, well, it's not going to happen. I said, well, why not? Banksy's not Welsh. I said, well, pardon? It's not a Welsh museum. It's an international museum based in Wales.
Yep.
And she looked me in the eye, folded her arms across the chest, and said, Banksy isn't Welsh. That was it, end of story. And after that, I never got any headaches, chest pains, or lack of sleep.
Didn't go back to Wales.
Well, funnily enough, you should say that. Did you see the papers this weekend?
No.
Oh, you Philistine. There was a big article in the Telegraph 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe a month, how St David's Cathedral in Wales, which they started building in 1182, is in financial trouble and could go bankrupt within 2 years. So I wrote to them and said, would you like an art exhibition? And I heard nothing. So I sent a copy of my original communication to a journalist, to the woman that had written the article, and said, no wonder they're in financial trouble. They don't even bother to reply. So we were away this weekend on holiday, and we had phone calls from the dean and chapter, from the bishop, and from somebody else. Can we borrow some Banksy's, please, basically?
Isn't it amazing?
It's the power of the press.
Yeah.
The power of the press. And everybody said, we never got your original communication. Well, as I hand wrote the envelope, that could be the problem. My handwriting is terrible. But, when you write the dean and chapter, St. David's Cathedral, St. David's, and I even found the postcode for them, you expect it to get to somebody.
You would expect
it to get to somebody. But when we were going to do the museum in Port Talbot, talking about, you mentioned BNI, I went to the BNI meeting in Swansea, which is 4 miles away. And I explained we were going to need painters, decorators, electricians, plumbers, scaffolders. We were going to create a cafe and train people to be baristas and everything else within the premises, printers, you name it. And everybody was very friendly. And I went back 2 weeks later to the next meeting and everything was held in Welsh. And the quotes I got to do any work were 50% more than sending people from Essex to do the same work. Yeah. And, you just think...
Something a little bit broken about that, isn't
really? Yes, be proud of your heritage, be proud of your culture, but that shouldn't stop you being open-minded. So we've had great fun with the walls. Now we're doing the show in Colchester. The next one's probably going to be on the Isle of Wight. And the nice thing is, it's fun.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to work in 70. Well, that's not true. I did a year's training in London, but basically I haven't gone to work since I was 13. And life's too short. There are so many people that go to work their entire lives and are dead within 2 years of retiring.
Yeah.
It is. People say you only live once. No, you don't. You live every single day, but you die once.
You've said to me that you're buying art now that you think people will want in 5 years' time.
Yeah. I'm buying art now. We're in a recession. The only question is if it develops into a depression like we had in the 1930s, which again was global.
Yeah.
So, but the point is that in the late 40s, early 50s, you could buy Picassos for the equivalent of £100, £200. So it's about using foresight, not hindsight.
Yeah.
It's picking brand leaders or brands that are leaders in a field. So Hockney is a brand leader. Banksy is a brand leader. Rembrandt. You want things that survive temporary fashion.
Yeah.
So personally, I don't think Tracy Emin will be collected in 30 years' time or 50 years' time. She is about marketing. And marketing is fickle. You want quality. You want things where you walk in a room and whether you like it. I mean, I personally don't like Jackson Pollock or Mark Rothko. So Mark Rothko is the one where there's a room in the Tate and they're big orange canvases with a brown line around them. And they are supposed to be great if you're stressed. You go in and sit in the room and it helps to de-stress you. I think they're rubbish. They're 20, 30 million pounds each, but I think they're rubbish. Jackson Pollock, best place for a Jackson Pollock's in the dustbin. But the number of fake Jackson Pollocks I've seen over the years, and you can spot instantly that they are fake. The artwork is the signature.
Yep.
And that's what I want from the artist I handle. So whether it's a Banksy or there's the two cleverest artists I know. One is called Professor David Tyndall, and he paints the most serene paintings, which is strange because he's as mad as a box of frogs. 3 wives, 9 children, more girlfriends than I've had cups of coffee. I really wouldn't want to put him under a microscope, but by God, he can paint serene scenes. And the other one is a man who's a street artist called My Dog Size, and he paints an eye, and you are the reflection in the pupil of the eye when you look at it. And he can paint on anything from a squash tin can 4 or 5 centimeters across, and he uses a brush with 2 bristles in it. And I was due to go and see him in the studio, and he rang me and he said, "You can't come and see me this week. I'm off to China to paint a wall." No, not that wall, but the wall he was painting was 9 stories high.
Wow.
Absolute genius, absolute rubbish at marketing. Everybody that knows him loves him. Everybody that knows him collects his work, and there's no secondary market at all. But he's a genius. And strangely enough, I find it very sad that the art world is so pretentious a lot of the time that it doesn't recognize popular artists. So everybody knows the fat lady for Beryl Cook, but the art establishment never accepted her. Everybody knows that the serene paintings with Jack Vetriano, the dancing on the beach, the butler dancing on the beach, things like that, and his sexy ladies in the windows. Wonderful artist. And dare I say, Rolf Harris was a great artist, but he had other problems.
Some challenges.
But in 100 years' time, people won't care about those problems. They won't be raw anymore. They will just look at the art and say, this was a good artist. Yeah. If somebody offered me a Caravaggio to hang on my wall, with the condition I could never sell it, I would jump at it. The fact he murdered 3 men wouldn't bother me one iota. So, a lot of the majority of artists throughout history, but certainly all the really good artists, the great artists I know, are just so hot-wired differently. They live their lives by totally different rules, regulations, standards. There's a huge crossover between artists who do music and artists who do fine art.
Yeah.
And we did a show at Bury St Edmunds, and we showed work by people like Ronnie Wood. David Bowie trained at the Royal College of Art. Yeah. Under Carol Waite, of course. That's how I knew about it. There's a whole. Ronnie Wood is phenomenal painter now. They are, but they're just hot-wired differently. They think differently. My friend, this David Tyndall, when he at the end of the war, he was 13. He ran away from home. He ran away from home near Leeds. He ran away. He ended up in Manchester painting scenery and rep for 3 years. So, huge things that were repainted every week.
Yeah.
After 3 years, he saved up enough money to travel to London. Didn't know anybody at all. Travelled down to London, and he would mix his own paints because to him that's nothing. Whereas to any other ordinary artist, including Hockney, they buy the paint ready-made. Yeah. David thought nothing of making his own paints. And he got off the train and he walked around and he found a bombed-out house in Little Venice on the canal side. You could literally see the roof through the building and the sky through the ceiling. And he was there painting one day and 2 guys walked past and said, "That's nice work." And this is a 16-year-old, right? And they said, "Thank you very much. That's nice of you." And they said, "Well, where's your studio?" David looked at them and said, with all the arrogance of youth, he just looked at them and said, "Here." "Well, where are you living?" "Here." "Oh, well, we're artists. There's a spare room in our house if you want it. My name is Francis Bacon. This is my friend Lucien Freud." And he moved in with them for 3 years. And by the time he was 18, he could drink 2 bottles of scotch in the morning.
Which isn't necessarily a call to fame.
No, but the call to fame was they spotted the quality.
Yeah, absolutely.
They spotted that he was worth
the investment in his alcohol addiction.
Yeah, creating an alcohol addiction. But absolute genius, absolute genius. And I love I'm if you like, I'm the bridge between the Satan world and the artistic world. And as I say, my clients do everything under the sun. We had our dog stolen. I rang somebody. We did everything. We put it on the radio. We put out posters. We did this. We did that. And then I rang one client. And I said, "Do you know anybody nasty?" "Why?" I explained. And 6 o'clock the following morning, we got the phone call saying your dog's been found. And I knew who he phoned.
It's not what you know; it's who you know.
Yes, but it's also making it a two-way respect and a two-way partnership. I say that I work with people, not against them. So if a client's more trouble than they're worth, they don't stay a client. if they don't want to pay me, they don't stay a client. Life's too short to worry about things that are unimportant. And money is only a tool. Money's not going to make you better.
No.
One of our clients is a multi-billionaire, and his wife's just got dementia. My brother-in-law was the number one man in Europe for Parkinson's, number one in Europe, number 4 in the world for Parkinson's research, Professor Quinn. He's now got dementia. Things like that put life into perspective.
Yeah.
And I mean, no amount of money will cure either of those two people.
No.
And it's not, because it's not just the one person, it's everybody around them is affected. The stress, the strain, you there's that program on television, The Big Build, The Big Build, where he goes in and he doesn't sort out a person, he sorts out a whole community.
Yeah.
I have reasons for not liking that program, but that's a personal thing. So it's health is far more important than art, which isn't probably a sensible thing to say when I've just come up with a motorway at 90 miles an hour.
I didn't hear that.
As long as the police didn't hear it.
No evidence, it's fine.
No evidence.
So a lot of people are worried and are saying that AI is terrible for art. Do you think it actually makes a difference?
It will make a difference. It will make a difference because people will be able to create an image for themselves with no composition, no... the answer to that is we still have professional photographers.
We do.
Yet everybody has a camera on their phone. And had a very good friend called Charles Gervais in BNI 20 years ago. And I said to Charles, he ought to be marketing the fact that just because you have a camera, it doesn't make you a photographer. Just because you have a knife, it doesn't make you a surgeon. And it'll be the same with AI. Just because you have the ability to do something, it doesn't mean that A, you should, or B, you will do it well. So a photographer knows how to frame what's in the photograph. He knows which part of the landscape to use in a photograph. He knows how to light your face for a portrait. He knows how to make a photograph look interesting. And anybody that says that the camera never lies has never been in a photographic studio. So I used to be in the photographic studio for the local newspaper 50 years ago, and I saw what they did to photographs. So the ability will be there.
Yeah.
Whether it's motor racing, anybody can get in a car. It doesn't make them Mr. Senna, and it doesn't make them safe. Anybody will be able to use AI. It's very, 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 very early stages of AI, and people don't understand it, including me. But at 71, I don't care anymore about worrying about it. But what it will do is there have been various things where Damien Hirst did a project where you could effectively hire one of his images to put onto your watch, and you paid £5 or £10, and you had the license to put it on your watch. That died a death. There's all sorts of things. People actually want to hold and physically see an object, whether it's a beautiful drinking glass.
Yeah.
We all know that if you go into a restaurant and you've ordered a bottle of wine for whatever amount of money, it tastes different if they put it in a nice, elegant glass or if they put it in a plastic beaker. It's the same alcohol in the same fluid, but it tastes different. It's a psychological thing. It's the same with art. People want to own the picture, not a picture.
And I think that's a great point. I mean, you said earlier that good art is something that people are happy to have on their walls. And if somebody produces something with AI that they like enough to put on their wall, good for them. But that sort of commoditization of art doesn't detract from the value of a beautiful piece that is
a unique
one
piece.
of one.
One of one, or a good print. So there's about 10 variations on what is a print. So the Sunday Times is a limited edition because at some point they switch off the presses.
Yep.
So the marketing of art has become more sophisticated. David Hockney did print in 1987 called A Bounce for Bradford. The edition was 10,000. When I bought them, everybody thought I was mad because the edition was so big. They're now just under £700 a sheet. Oh, they were published at 18 pence, by the way. So they're now £700 a sheet.
How many did you buy?
3,000. But unfortunately, I've been selling them over the years. So, it's not like I've got 3,000 by that. But that's the point is, but he created those. Whereas if you ring up the National Gallery, you can say you want a print of the hay wain and they'll press a button and print it off. If that's what you want on your wall, there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
If you're doing it because you want to protect your asset, the money that you've put into it, then you're going to lose. If you buy something, I say to people that the dividend is the pleasure. Yeah. If you've bought something and you genuinely like it, that's your return on money. Your return on investment. If you've bought it purely as an investment, you'll never like it because you're always going to think, if I keep it another day, it might go up. Oh dear, it's gone down a penny. I should have sold it yesterday, So it becomes then a commodity. Oh. So buy art because you like it. Have the confidence. What I hate is when people walk into my gallery is the most untidy place you'll ever see.
Really? I hadn't seen that.
Oh, well.
The backdrop for video tells a story.
Exactly, it does, yes. And that only tells a fraction of it. But anyway, my gallery is very untidy. So when somebody comes in my gallery and says there's nothing here, they're lying. What I mean is there's nothing here that I'm comfortable saying I like or that I dislike.
Yeah.
They're scared to have an opinion. I want people to have an opinion. So I don't mind if somebody walks in my gallery and says, oh, that's terrible. What have you got that on the wall for? Because it's had its purpose. It's created a reaction.
Absolutely.
I don't like framed wallpaper. I don't like, there's an awful lot of art out there that is purely there to fill a space within a frame. And I want people to covet what they're walking out the door with. And we had one case where a director of Lloyd's Bank came down to collect a Carol Waite painting at 28,000. He'd come down from London with his wife, and he came down to collect. He'd already agreed to buy it. And he was talking about his grandchildren. I said, what's your grandchild called? He said, Thomas. I said, oh, well, I've got the original artwork for Thomas the Tank Engine, created by a man called Timothy Marwood. He did it for about 25, 30 years, and then he died of cancer. But I bought the whole studio from him. Hang on a minute. And I went off and I found an A4 size front cover, original drawing of Thomas the Tank Engine. Gave it to him. And he looked at it. And I looked at him. And I said, all right, so what's the problem? Because he was being very polite. He had been chairman of the stock exchange. He was being very polite. And I said, it's not a smiley one. Okay, so I went back to the stack, found a smiley Thomas, swapped it over in the frame, gave it back to him. He went out clutching this picture of Thomas the Tank Engine.
More dearly than the art that he just...
And as he hit the door, he said, oh, Judith, would you bring the picture with you? That he'd driven down from London for. I mean, his house was 3 doors up from Claridge's.
Yeah.
Just lovely. But, he really coveted what he went out the door with. That's what art should do. Yeah. We've just sold a Thomas to somebody who's sending it off to South Africa, who you know. It should make people smile. It should make people laugh. It should be uplifting.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it. I mean, and meeting an awful lot of characters along the way.
Well, and you've met most of them, I think.
No. But I mean, I've met a few in the time. We had a lovely thing one time where a very, very nice lady did we used to sell her paintings for charity. We do an awful lot of fundraising for charities. We don't give them the money, but we facilitate them making a lot of money. Anyway, this elderly gentleman, I was out the back. My partner, Linda, was in the front. And where we live, it's commuter belt. And a lot of those people are in the city and they think they're very important. Anyway, I was out the back. Linda was out the front, dealing with a young couple about framing for about £40 worth of framing or something. And this old gentleman in tweeds came in. And Linda said, I hate it when you're just ignored. Just make contact. And of course, what I call the Hutton Mount Brigade, the city boys, would say, you're not important, stop everything, can I have a piece of string, or something like that, Anyway, so this old boy came in, and Linda said, can I help you? He said, no, that's all right, I'm just having a look around, that's fine. Okay. So after 5 or 10 minutes, the young couple disappeared with their framing order done, and she turned to him and said, can I help? Basically, you're still here. Can I help you? And he said, yes, I've come to collect 2 paintings for my wife. Now, we have a lot of stock. So she said, oh, yes, what are they? I don't know. And Linda's thinking, we've got the right one here, haven't we? Okay, fine enough. Benefit of the doubt because of his age, do you know what they're of? And he said, well, they could be landscapes, or they could be children on the beach, or they could be flowers. I see, says, thinks Linda, but with a smile on her face. Do you know who the artist is? And he said, oh, yes. My wife's the artist. Her name's Anne Norfolk. He was the Duke, the Premier Duke in England. He'd parked a car out the back that was, with a full tank of petrol, today would be worth £400, but then it was £300.
Yep.
And he explained that everything was in trust. He didn't own anything. Everything was in trust for 4 generations. They know how to play the tax system. They don't abuse it, they use it.
Yeah.
And he and his wife were lovely. The people around them, whole different story. But they were lovely. And, if he's late, they hold the House of Lords. But he was lovely. He was nice. We meet all sorts of people. And art is a great leveler.
Yeah.
Because of that, I'm very lucky. I meet all sorts of people. But I'll tell you a funny story. Let me tell you a funny story. Before I opened the gallery, long before I opened the gallery, and I was dealing in the chairs. So I've got 2,500 chairs in people's garages all over Brentwood.
Yep.
And about 500 of them were stored in a house owned by the Ford Motor Company, because Fords of Europe were based in Brentwood. And one of the directors was a guy called Bob Courier, Canadian guy. And his wife was Eileen. And Eileen saw that the Anna Sewell's house was being sold up down near Brighton. And she'd got the catalogue. And in the catalogue, in one lot, were 3 prints by a company called Courier and Ives in America. And Courier and Ives printed, in England, we had the similar thing, penny plain, tuppence coloured, really cheap prints on newsprint, that sort of. So she decided she wanted to buy these 3 prints for him for his birthday present. But she couldn't go and get them without alerting him. So she said to me, would I go and I'll take the car. It was wonderful. I used to have, if I needed a car, it was never more than 6 weeks old because I used to borrow them from the Fords people. So she sent me in the car down to buy these prints. And the deal was she wanted the 2 horse racing prints. And the 3rd one she didn't want. That was my commission, if you like. Right. Okay. So I bought these 3 prints, brought them back. And the 3rd one was, I don't know how to say this nowadays, but anyway, the 3rd one is of a young black boy combing his hair and preening himself in front of a fragment of a mirror next to an open glazed window in the attic rooms, because of the angle of the roof, you could see that he's in the gable end of a house, not in a nice bedroom. And the caption then is, one day anybody could be president, or words to that effect. Now, bearing in mind, this was printed in the 1860s. So I couldn't sell it in Brentwood. So I advertised it in a magazine called the Antique Collectors Club magazine. And I got a phone call from somebody with an American accent saying they'd like to buy it. And I said, it's £100 or whatever it was. Fine, we'll send. Can you send it? And they gave me the address, and I wrapped it up and sent it off. And then I didn't get the money. And I let it go for a few weeks. And then I asked, this is so long ago, there was a thing called directory inquiries, international directory inquiries. So I rang directory inquiries and asked for the number of these people, and I got it. And I rang up and I said, excuse me, I sent you the picture, I haven't been paid. And a woman very stringently said, do you know who you're talking to? So I said, yes, somebody who hasn't paid me. So she said, I'll deal with it. I'll get my secretary to pay you. And I thought, That's odd. Fair enough. Okay. And it turned out that it was the Reverend Jesse Jackson's wife I was talking to. And she was buying it for her son's bedroom. But the significant thing was that Jesse Jackson's lived next door to people called Obama. And they both had sons. So did Obama play in the Jackson's son's bedroom and see the print of a young boy with the wording, anything is possible?
We'll never know.
We'll never know. And I wrote to Obama and I never got a letter back.
Well, that's a shame.
But I might write it. He's got a new, he's building a hideous library, isn't he, somewhere?
Probably.
Yes, it looks like a brick on its end in the middle of parkland somewhere. So I think I'll write to that and ask the question.
You'll probably get a response then, especially if he thinks he can get some Banksies.
I'll send him a photograph of the Telegraph article. That might help.
I think we could talk all day, but we'd probably
I
better
could,
bring
anyway.
the podcast to
I
an
could.
end. It's been an absolute pleasure, John. Thank you very much.
Good to see you, Tim.